In Runeterra, a fictional land existing within the League of Legends universe consisting of multiple regions, there are several LGBTQ+ characters and stories being explored. On one hand, it makes League of Legends stand out, because while it is known for players that can get pretty toxic, it's also a game that doesn't shy away from portraying characters that differ, whether it's gay couples, bisexual, asexual, or even trans characters. Runeterra is not a place where homophobia or any kind of phobia aimed at sexual orientation or identity exists. More than that, a person's sexuality is a consistent part of the character across all universes, including alternate realities. On the other hand, while providing queer characters, their background stories, suggestive voice lines, and eventually official art, Riot also created them fairly indirectly and cautiously. After all, the market is in major part aimed at China, where any kind of queerness is a subject of censorship. I don't think I have to remind you how Vi and Caitlin's scenes in Arcane were butchered there. Thus, many people potentially wouldn't even realize two characters are more than friends, provided they weren't paying attention. But us, the queers, we notice. Now, since it's Pride Month, let's go through official canonized League of Legends queer couples, with some honorable mentions regarding queer characters, and properly celebrate. We are starting off with Twisted Fate, otherwise known as Tobias Felix, and Malcolm Graves, both coming from Bilgewater, region largely surrounded by waters, swamps, dominated by fights between gangs, smugglers, conmen, pirates, raiders, and sea creatures. Land that seems uninviting and unlikely to portray a romantic bond between two very tough guys, yet it does exist. It'd be easy to throw them in "they're just good friends" bag, despite giving off a clear married couple energy. But by far, they aren't just friends, and it has been confirmed. Twisted Fate and Graves first met in Gambling Hall, back when the former still called himself Tobias. They hit it off. They became partners in crime and roommates for many years. However, one of their heists failed terribly, causing Tobias to leave Graves behind. Despite his attempts to save him, Graves was sent to prison in Zone, tortured for many years. In the meantime, Tobias continued to go on the heist, and eventually he started calling himself Twisted Fate. He's a gambler. His main choice of weapon is his card deck. Needless to say, Graves was very much hurt and very much angry because he thought that Twisted Fate left him behind. The thing is, Twisted Fate tried to come back, he tried to save him, but he never actually managed to do so. He even mentioned in one of the stories that he lost his men while trying to rescue Graves. Graves is pretty stubborn, so he wasn't willing to hear him out when they met again. Now, there are 3 stories that focus on their adventures, and within these stories, if you aren't careful, you might miss the hints that were dropped there. Maybe apart from the last one where it was pretty direct. Now, in the first one, titled Destiny and Fate, it was a story of a heist that they performed together. They were pretty playful towards one another. It's not really hard to miss if you are paying attention. They call each other partners, they are insulting one another in a playful way, but also they are there for one another. Most prominent example of that in the Destiny and Fate story is when they actually reach the artifact that they were sort of looking for. Tobias, while obtaining it, he throws it to Graves, telling him that he trusts him more than he trusts himself. Now, Graves, as a sign of trust, throws it back to him and tells him that he does trust him with it. Now, Burning Tide's second story, it's fairly long, almost like a short book. I highly recommend it. It's actually strongly focused on them meeting together again while attempting a heist on Gangplank, so at the time, the main gang's leader dominating over Bilgewater. The whole thing was actually a plot designed by Misfortune, so Sarah Misfortune, who is one of the main Bilgewater protagonists and champions. Very interesting champion, I think very well known as well. So both of them met again after years of not seeing each other, after years that Malcolm spent in prison believing that Twisted Fate left him behind. The rage that he feels towards him, the anger, not willing to forgive Tobias for abandoning him, that amount of feeling hurt only comes from actually caring about someone. So while trying to fight Gangplank's flags, they yell at one another and they clear things out. Tobias admits that he never wanted to leave Graves behind, that he tried to come back, and that Graves is too stubborn to see it and believe him. Graves realized that that is actually true, and he decided to forgive Tobias. He also refused to call him Twisted Fate, a moment that Tobias acknowledged. Ever since then, they have been partners again. And in the story, the boys and Bambolini, they meet their old friend who claims that he always knew that Graves and Twisted Fate would actually end up a couple. They both hear that. Now, the boys and the Bambolini is a story that heavily builds up towards a proper couple, where Tobias goes as far as touching Graves' hair, joking about his former lovers that include men, as well as showing signs of jealousy. Eventually, both of them agree to leave Bilgewater together as partners, which they heavily underline. But the vibe of the moment clearly confirms they both know it's so much more than that. Now, to add to this, former Riot writer confirmed that she wrote Malcolm and Tobias as a married couple already back in 2015, but was told by Riot to shut it down. The energy and vibe remain though, so it's not something that they came up with and threw in just to be, as some would say, politically correct. It's something that has existed for 10 years now. Interestingly enough, first fairly official confirmation was actually Vi's voice line. Vi is of course featured in the video later on. Now here's what Vi says.
Fate! Where's your better half?
That's a pretty direct confirmation. Now, other voice lines between them two are fairly suggestive as well.
Easy, partner.
Tough luck, Malcolm.
Hey, TF. How's the partner?
Together again, huh?
Finally, Riot, back in 2022, released emotes that are very obviously resembling Brokeback Mountain iconic scene. I think that this doesn't really leave any space for doubts or interpretation. That's pretty straightforward and direct. We got an official Pride art that includes them both. That's sealed and confirmed. League of Legends recap website also tells us that Graves is gay and Tobias is bisexual, hinted as pansexual. Fantastic couple overall. While reading their short stories, which I highly recommend, I've been shipping them hard. From wet, swamp-surrounded ports of bounty hunters and pirate-centered Bilgewater, we are moving towards Mount Targan, highest peak in Runeterra, towering mountain, remote and difficult to reach. Its lower areas are home to Rakor people, while the higher reaches are dominated by harsh conditions and celestial phenomena. Targan is known for its mystical connection to the celestial realm and its role in the stories of the aspects. But more importantly, Targan is known for its conflict between the Lunari and the Solari. This is precisely why the couple that I am about to discuss is by far my favorite Runeterra couple, Vi and Caitlyn aside, Diana and Leona. One comes from the Lunari tribe, the other is Solari. The Solari and Lunari are rival religious factions. The Solari worship the sun and dominate the region, enforcing their beliefs and the orthodox faith. The Lunari, who worship the moon, were persecuted and forced into hiding. Their conflict symbolizes ideological differences: light versus shadow, sun versus moon. Champions Leona and Diana embody this clash, very much like Vi and Cait were embodying the conflict between Piltover and Zon. Now there is a fantastic story about Diana and Leona that leaves no space for interpretation when it comes to the nature of their connection, as well as a very suggestive trailer, a trailer to die for. Rise With Me was actually published back in 2021 as part of Riot's 2021 Pride event. The story highlighted romantic connection between Diana and Leona, and also served as the very first official League of Legends tale explicitly depicting same-sex romance. The story follows Diana and Leona during their youth as acolytes training under the Solari faith on Mount Targan. Despite their very different views, Leona being devoutly loyal to the Solari, and Diana questioning the Solari beliefs, they form a deep emotional and intellectual bond that gradually turns romantic. Now, the story is written in forms of letters and diaries from both of the girls. You can see the intellectual connection being formed between them. The best part is that they don't actually act offensively towards one another despite different beliefs. They exchanged messages while respecting other person's beliefs. Now, Leona is sort of blinded by the Solari beliefs. She's not really questioning it, while Diana is challenging her. You can see how over time they become closer and closer until they finally meet in a remote spot and share a kiss. However, as their connection grows, so does the tension between personal truth and religious expectation. Diana becomes more drawn to Lunari teachings while Leona feels torn between her duty and her feelings. The story ends with painful realization that their paths are diverging, one bound to tradition, the other to rebellion, but their love and memories remain deeply rooted. Now, despite eventually growing up and joining opposite tribes, Lunari and Solari, who are fighting one another, there is a trailer that focuses on another couple that resembles them both, one coming from Solari and the other from Lunari. We can see them running away because that type of a bond is not exactly allowed. We can see both Diana and Leona chasing them, and eventually both of them seeing that the love between the couple, very much resembling their own, could actually survive. It was possible for them to be together. They face each other, but they are not attacking one another. The love is still there, but they're both so deeply convinced that they cannot be together, they aren't even trying properly. Now, I am obsessed with that couple, actually obsessed. You know, the type of a forbidden love, the yearning, that's a trope that I live for. I think the most tragic aspect about their love is that in the Rise With Me story, we can actually see parts of Lunari teachings that were ripped out of their books. And these teachings, they actually portray the fact that Lunari and Solari should exist together, that the sun and the moon don't have to fight one another. But since these teachings are gone, Diana and Leona remain on opposite sides. I will leave you with some voice lines that speak for themselves.
The heavens are divided, Diana, but sun and moon are ever linked. Fate has delivered me to you once again. Our destinies are entwined. Wherever I go, you are never far behind. When night falls, I know that you are with me. I am Targon's daughter who will unite the heavens. Unity is not conquest, Leona. The tribes of Sun and Moon once had peace. A peace built on lies would never last. Enemies, allies, you're full of surprises. Ever at odds, but never apart.
We are moving towards the Shuriman jungle, a rare and mysterious oasis hidden within the vast, unforgiving desert. Dominated by ancient ruins, primal magic, and deadly creatures, it is an anomaly where the remains of lost civilizations lie buried beneath tangled vines. This is where Nidalee encountered Neeko. Now, Neeko was the first confirmed openly queer champion in League of Legends. She was revealed to be a lesbian by Riot Games narrative writer Matt Dunn back in 2018, along the release of her character, distinguishing her as the first champion whose sexuality was explicitly stated. Despite Neeko being one of the most cheerful and endearing League of Legends champions, she does have, like most of them, a tragic backstory. Now, Neeko was a part of an Uvicat tribe living on an island far from Shuriman coast. Uvicat descended from Vestaya Sharai, the original tribe behind the Vestayans. They lived together until a tragedy happened, killing most of the elders on the island. Because Uvicat can transform in any shape, Neeko became a bird and ran away, thus escaping death. She was too tired to fly, so eventually she fell into the sea, where she was found by a ship heading towards a Shuriman port. Overwhelmed by people using words instead of overall behavior like her tribe used to, she ran away to the jungle and transformed into a wild cat. Now, Nidalee, we don't quite know how, but she was found as a baby deep within the Shuriman jungle. Very much like Neeko, she also can become another creature, so she became a wild cat and lived with a tribe. Eventually, their cat mother, leader of the tribe, tragically died, and Nidalee became a leader of that herd. She also learned how to transform into a human and back, and it's possible she also has some Vestayan origins. That's where she met Neeko. Neeko, wandering the jungle, very much lost, was looking for a tribe to join, and she found the cats. Nidalee accepted her, and what we know for certain is that they spent a good amount of time together, if not months, wandering and getting close to one another. Initially, it was suggested that it was only Neeko having some sort of feelings towards Nidalee, but later on, both their voice lines and a song about them that League of Legends posted. It all confirmed that it was actually a mutual feeling, a mutual bond. But per usual with League of Legends couples, they got separated. Neeko decided that she has to follow her inner feeling that there is a tribe somewhere out there for her, and she wanted to explore that feeling. She asked Nidalee to join her, but Nidalee wanted to stay within the Shuriman jungle protecting her tribe, and so they separated. Now, as always, voice lines give us a lot of context when it comes to the character of certain bond, so have a listen.
Pahasiki! It means I like you, in a good way. Nidalee! Weird seeing you here. Neeko misses you.
My den was quiet without you, lizard girl.
Neeko missed Nidalee so much. Nidalee Fahasiki.
I like you too, Neeko. Koom Sehena. Did I say it right?
Yes, it is perfect. You are perfect.
Love takes as many shapes as you do, Neeko. Neeko, my world feels empty without you.
Neeko,
On top of that, he's part of the song. A song that's quite a banger, by the way, but it definitely underlines the romantic connection between them two.
When darkness falls, you are my light. You take my hand and hold it tight. You are my home. I know it now. Don't let me go. We're safe and sound.
Now they're adorable, definitely opposites, and there's not much lore behind there. It's not as complex as Twisted Fate Graves and Diana and Leona. It also hasn't been strictly confirmed, but for sure they make a very adorable couple. Now we have been to Bilgewater Rainy Islands, mystical Targan Peaks, and Shuriman Ancient Deserts. Traveling very north, leaving the jungles behind, we will find a region connecting south of Runeterra to northern parts of it, Noxus, the Marcia, Freyjord. That region being Piltover and Zon. Cities once connected into Ostrov and Zon, now separated as a result of building a canal that led to floods destroying its lower regions, causing the division and inequality. This is where we find the single best ship of Runeterra, Cait and Vi. Now there is no need whatsoever to introduce their arcane story, we all know it by heart, and at this point they became a symbol of pride for us arcane fans. Though slightly neglected during this Pride month somehow, we didn't get too much to go on with. That's gonna be a separate video. Now instead of discussing arcane, which I have done several times, let's focus on their League of Legends roots within the Runeterra. The ship existed pretty much since the very beginning. Their voice lines were very suggestive to start with, prominent example being frequent Cupcake mention. To give you some examples.
I'll chat with Cupcake later.
Nice shot, Cupcake. High five, Cupcake.
On top of that, Caitlyn's bio was edited the moment Vi was released as a champion to include a mention of her, precisely that their relationship is a popular gossip among the Wardens. Cait and Vi are considered partners, and are usually seen in each other's artworks. When paired together, they also have a buff called Piltover's Finest, which of course is their League of Legends ship name. Vi visually was created to resemble of what back then was considered the way a lesbian would look like. So naturally that caused gossip among the League of Legends fans to begin with. Still, it wasn't enough to get a proper confirmation at the time. We have to remember that this was 2012. Prior Graves and Twisted Fate were even created, without strictly mentioning them of course, prior any queer champion was announced. Riot had a strict don't ask, don't tell policy. So it wasn't until 2017 that this would change, and some region introduced Vi and Caitlyn's art as part of the Valentine's events. Now, initially most of the hints we started receiving came from Vi, especially with Vi being confirmed to be attracted to women when her Heartbreaker skin debuted in 2019, as well as some suggestions about Vi being connected to a female champion, Fiora. Following this, more teasing came, like Vi making references to Caitlyn as response to Miss Fortune's flirty voice lines in Legends of Runeterra. Listen to this.
Vi? I should have brought flowers. Try cupcakes.
So loyal. The latest League of Legends hint dropped just prior Arcane. That was Caitlyn's visual and audio update. In fact, the very first time Caitlyn had a visual audio update where she finally received voice lines aimed directly at Vi. Best example being this one.
Tell Vi.
Which is a Caitlyn's deaf voice line, strongly suggesting that she wants to say, tell Vi I love her. And the rest is history. Now, last thing I want to mention is Child of Zone's story, which to me fits perfectly within Arcane's continuation. Highly recommended. It's a great lead and I personally consider it more or less canon. It places both Caitlyn and Vi together in Piltover. Caitlyn as its sheriff, Vi as a warden, enforcer basically, working together against crime, uncovering schemes happening in Zone. This one specifically focused on a champion called Urgot. Story is focusing on Caitlyn asking Vi to go to Zone undercover, putting her roots to good use. Now in the story, Vi questions where she belongs, if her Zone upbringing still stands out, making her a stranger in both places. We can see how Caitlyn and Vi are playful towards one another, how Caitlyn says she cannot trust anyone else with the mission, and how Caitlyn cares for Vi, constantly having her back. Now some voice lines fit in very well within that world that I would like to imagine after Arcane, with both of them working together as enforcers, fighting off crimes, both living together in Piltover. Now have a listen to some of these.
I'll ask politely, though I can't vouch for my partner.
Sheriff Cupcake can't be mad at me.
I'm glad you'll have my back, Vi. Let's keep the chaos to a minimum, shall we?
You certainly know how to make an entrance.
These ones are great, they focus on the way they work together.
I'm doing this my way.
We are doing this our way.
Now more or less my favorite voice lines one that to me really hits the essence within the relationship is this one.
Oh, look at me. I'm on the case.
Well, obviously, like Caitlyn and Vi, I don't think I need to add anything else. We know that this is probably the best queer ship out there and not even in Runeterra. So I hope you guys enjoyed me bringing up some of the League of Legends roots that existed years prior Arcane. Arcane only sealed the deal that is now, pretty much confirmed. Personally, I do need to add that Caitlyn and Vi, to me, are the best example of queer representation that ever came to be in any type of media. It's fleshed out, believable, had a natural ongoing bond and progression, had its challenges and ultimately an outcome we all deserved. It is pretty incredible Arcane writers took so little, two partners that existed only within the League of Legends lore without too much of a specific backstory, and created the most wonderful tale about love that at the same time served as an ode to queerness. Now, we have explored the main couples that are more or less confirmed within the League of Legends universe, within the League of Legends lore. There are some champions that are queer. There's a lot, actually. There's so many champions that represent the LGBTQ+ very well. But before we move on to these, there was another queer couple very much worth mentioning that didn't strictly come to exist between champions per se. It was, however, quite explicitly portrayed in a cinematic video that served as a backstory for another popular champion, Varus. In order to do so, we have to go back for a minute to Shurima, once attacked during its prime when it was still a magnificent empire, defended by its faithful god warriors that over time have gone mad and became Darkins. Now, I am limited by this video's theme, so it would be too complicated to explain what a Darkin is. Just know that these are corrupted beings from Shurima, former god warriors, once very powerful, and now very dangerous. Because of how dangerous they are, once captured, they were trapped within sentient weapons. Varus was one of these warriors. He defended Shurima, and once he was defeated, Vestian hunters trapped him within a bow and locked in Ionia's well underneath a mountain sanctuary. That is where the bow lay hidden for hundreds of years, until Noxus invaded Ionia. During that invasion, two Ionian beast hunters, Valmar and Kai, hid within that very sanctuary as Kai was wounded, and Valmar believed he can save him using the well's sacred water. Unfortunately, that was the very same well where Varus was hidden. Using the opportunity and his powers, he destroyed both Kai and Valmar, utilized their bodies, and created a new one for himself. So these two lovers will, in a way, remain together forever, just not in a way they probably imagined. In other words, Varus is a champion made out of sacrifice for love. A sacrifice in the name of love between two men. This precise story was specifically portrayed in a cinematic titled As We Fall from 2017 that shook the League of Legends community. Especially since often for some reason it is easier to accept love between two women instead of two men. On top of that, the trailer was quite direct and explicit, but by far it wasn't a case of throwing in a gay couple to become more inclusive. Story of Valmar and Kai was created with passion, detail, wonderful artistic approach as the video is stunning, and a beautiful backstory written in comic books that you can find online. Now, I do have to add that we don't know if Varus is strictly a queer character, but he is made out of two gay men, so, you know. Now, as promised, let's leave couples behind and mention some of the main queer champions that Runeterra has to offer. And we absolutely have to start with Xanta. Now, Xanta, he's not just one of the first black champions in League of Legends. He's also the first black gay champion and the first champion that was queer already on the launch in 2022. Because as I discussed previously, the other champions, while they were queer for many years, League of Legends didn't actually quite confirm it, so, you know, they kept them closeted. I thought that this would just be a brief mention, but I read Xanta's story and biography and honestly both blew me away. We are staying in Shurima. Xanta is part of a tribe that lives in Nazuma. He's one of the warriors fighting for Nazuma, an oasis that is trying to keep it to themselves. Stay far away from the Ascended, from Azir that is bringing destruction within Shurima. Xanta is also called the pride of Nazuma. Now, because he's one of the best Nazuma warriors, of course he spent many years training, and while he was training he paired up with Tope, another warrior, one that prefers to fight from the distance. In the meantime, Xanta prefers to fight more offensively. In that way they were complementing each other. As they spent years training, they got closer and closer. One night Xanta confessed his feelings to Tope and they became a couple. They were a couple for quite a long time, but they were also warriors. Once they realized there is this beast that needs to be defeated, they were trying to beat it together. That beast was half cobra, half lion. They kept trying and trying, but they couldn't find a way to approach the beast and actually killing it. Since Xanta had quite an ego, he felt that he needs to defeat the beast. While trying to figure out how, he kept pushing Tope away. It became sort of an obsession of his. And while Tope had some good advice to offer, Xanta was not willing to listen to him. They grew further and further apart until eventually Tope left. The one thing that Tope left behind was his notebook with tips and his observations when it comes to the beast. Eventually, when Xanta realized he cannot do it on his own, he reached out to the notebook and found tips that allowed him to finally defeat the half cobra, half lion. By then, Tope was gone. While it was a victory, it was a bittersweet one because he lost his love along the way. There is a story that picks up on their tale years later. Xanta was trying to fight off the Ascended, alone versus 20 warriors. Tope arrived and helped him. He took exhausted Xanta to his camp when they had a chance to discuss things. While discussing things, they finally said all the stuff that they should have said back then. It was clear that they still care for one another, and I was very much hoping that they would actually get together. Unfortunately, the story ended on a sad note, as Tope said that he's supposed to get married. To a man, by the way. So it is a story that blew me away. It's another gay story, similar to Twisted Fate and Graves in the way that it actually has a lot of lore behind it, and a great build-up, a lot of tension, feelings, unresolved emotions. I enjoyed it so much. And by the way, I recorded a reaction to cinematics about Xanta and his voice lines. That's on my Patreon, and I'm gonna leave it open even to free members as sort of a teaser when it comes to my Patreon, so if you want to check it out, I would really appreciate it. Moving on and leaving Shurima behind. I haven't mentioned Noxus too much in this video. There's not too many strictly queer champions that come from Noxus, but there is one that is definitely worth mentioning, and I think one that is more or less connected to Arcane these days. That champion being Rell. Rell had a bit of a different lore back before Arcane than she does now, but she has always been introduced as a fighter who rides a horse and has magical abilities allowing her to influence metal while fighting. Now, prior a book about Ambessa that was released just this year, her role mostly included pit fights. Lately her lore has changed, and in majority it was due to this book called Ambessa Chosen by the Wolf. In a way it seemed to be a bit of an afterthought. I don't want to get too much into her lore because it's not what matters for the sake of this video. For the sake of this video, what matters is that Rell has been and is bisexual. First of all, she has voice lines that are kind of flirtatious and aimed both at men and women. For example, Echo or Seraphine.
Oh, so your name's Echo. That's cool. I'm cool. You're cute, Seraphine. Well, bye.
This year during Pride, League of Legends released this art that includes her with a bisexual flag on her face. And most of all, without spoiling too much, in that book about Ambessa that heavily connects her to the Medardha clan, and overall it just feels like they're building up to something that might be connected to the next show that could be placed in Noxus, which I still believe is going to happen. And they just wanted to give Rell more of a connection, more of a background story, and possibly include her in the show, since she is heavily connected to Ambessa Medardha, and the next show could include, as we know from that one cinematic trailer, Mel Medardha. That book mentioned a relationship with this girl called Tora. It seemed to be quite an important one. League of Legends mentioned Tora on their official website during this Pride event. Tora is not a champion, but Rell is, and it seems like she's been definitely grounded as queer, as bisexual, more or less in a relationship with Tora. And I'm not going to describe that because I highly recommend reading the book about Ambessa. It gives a bit of a backstory to Arcane. And speaking of Arcane, a special mention, not strictly placed in League of Legends, unless we consider Arcane lore canon, which we were told to do that. Last that we have seen in Arcane, Mel Spy. She's a trans woman and she was voiced by a trans actress. And speaking of trans characters, League of Legends was supposed to introduce the very first openly transgender character. One that comes from Shurima, nomadic mage Taliyah. It was confirmed by one of former Riot writers, Daniel Klein, who explicitly stated that Taliyah was written as transgender, but they were simply too afraid to push forward with that idea at the time. Don't ask, don't tell. Having said that, the idea is still there, and it's safe to assume Taliyah is transgender. Along with the release of Neeko, there was a voice line that indicated so.
Neeko, not the only one who changes.
It was also confirmed within the Star Guardian alternate universe when asked about her outfit, and by none other than Kai'Sa, which I will get to her in a second. Taliyah confirms that she does feel more like herself when wearing it. And remember what I said beginning of the video, one's sexual orientation and identity is part of Champion's core across all the universes, including alternate ones. Now I have to bring up a fantastic story called Hollowspan, placed in Shurima, because this is where Taliyah met Kai'Sa. So I kinda lied when I said that we're done with couples. This has to be brought up. Taliyah was at the time trying to lead her tribe towards a safe, legendary land through a desert with dangerous creatures called lamplights attacking them. And Kai'Sa is a champion who, once devoured by the Void, returned as a fighter and protector of Runeterra, trying to fight off the Void wearing an armor that became part of her body that often scares people away. Not Taliyah though. When she met Kai'Sa, they quickly got closer and pursued a fight towards the Void's creatures that Kai'Sa warned her about, trying to save Taliyah's tribe. And as they were about to go their separate ways, Kai'Sa realized she actually missed Taliyah. And the thought surprised her. It's been a while since she got close to anyone. Further into the story, Kai'Sa went back to help her out. Together, they were able to push through and save some of Taliyah's friends. And as they did that, they both supported each other, helped each other, and realized perhaps they should work together against the Void. Taliyah stated that she is going to cross the desert and asked Kai'Sa to join her while holding her hands. Story ended on that note. Them living together. Now at this point it's not confirmed nor canon, but the chemistry is clearly there. Final more or less relationship that I want to bring up takes us all the way back to Mount Targan, more specifically a sea nearby. Within the sea there is a tribe of sea Vestians living there, called Marai. And one of the champions that serves as a protector of that tribe is called Nami. Nami exists within Legends of Runeterra, and by now it has been confirmed that she is bisexual and in a polyamorous relationship with two other characters, Loto and Tama. That is quite a big deal to include not only bisexual characters, but one that actually is involved in a polyamorous relationship. And finally, I want to bring up the fact that in July of 2021, Riot Games posted a tweet stating Happy International Non-Binary Day, introducing non-binary characters in Legends of Runeterra. For years now, Riot has been posting pride art that includes many of the champions that I have brought up in this very video. Now, Riot has gone a long way when it comes to portrayal of diversity, starting with champions that existed pretty much from beginning, like Cait and Vi, who were clearly connected, but for many years not officially. Going through champions like Twisted Fate and Graves, who already back in 2015 were supposed to be married. Champions like Diana and Leona, written from the get-go as a tragic love story, ending with characters like Kai'Sa or Neeko, who were openly queer from the get-go. For several years now we have been celebrating Pride with Riot, and the queer champions I have discussed in this very video. Still there's work to be done, characters that need some sort of clarity or closure. League of Legends has certainly progressed though, and the range of queer characters we can pick from today, especially given their prior don't ask, don't tell policy, is certainly impressive. It's also impressive that having only bits and pieces, they were able to create stories such as Cait and Vi's. Compared to other queer champions, they definitely did not have as much lore behind them, which surely also left space for interpretation and imagination. Tales of Diana and Leona, or Twisted Fate and Graves, as much as I'd love to see them developed one way or another, are basically written, just need a conclusion. But then champions like Neeko, Nidalee, Taliyah or Rell, their stories are still out there, ready to be crafted and created with as much care as Arcane did. Having said that, happy Pride Month everyone, thank you so much for watching.